we've got a lot of problems. I believe we live in the greatest country on the face of the earth. We live in the greatest state in the nation, or else we wouldn't be here. OH. Right. And we are members, for the most part, of the greatest political party ever devised by man or woman. And I would submit to you that all three of those have been hijacked from us by corrupt leaders. There is nothing wrong with our country. There is nothing wrong with our Constitution. There is nothing wrong with our state, and there is nothing wrong with our party. It is the flawed, characterless human beings who are running those institutions and entities that are absolutely taking us over a cliff. Now, I get accused quite a bit of being angry. And I remember Donald Trump got accused of the same thing during the debates. Do you remember that? And he said, yeah, I am angry. I am angry because, we live in the greatest country in the world, and you guys, fake news and all the rest, are maligning us, and you're helping the Democrats and yada, yada, yada. He went on and on and on. He owned it. He owned his anger. And so I am angry. But it's righteous anger. It's biblical anger. It's not rage. I don't wish ill will on Joe Biden. I just want him to go away. And I don't wish ill will on Mike DeWine. I just want him to go away too. And I don't wish ill will on Bob Paduchik, the chairman of the Ohio Republican Party, or Dave Johnson, the treasurer. I just want them to go away. Right? I want them to go away. And I really hope that they're repentant about the lies they've told, the dishonesty, the omissions, and just how they've let people down. So why am I doing this? I'm doing this because of that kind of situation we find ourselves in. But a few things came together for me. And many of you have heard this, but I'm going to repeat it again because I like telling the story, because I feel my story is very much like many of yours. I come from a lower middle class family. My grandfathers were coal miners. My mom and dad had outhouses when they were kids. They did not grow up with a silver spoon in their mouth. They did not go to private schools like Rob Portman, the guy I want to replace. They didn't go to college when they graduated from high school. They went to work. My dad went into the Navy. Grew up in a lower middle class family, but we didn't know any different. Everybody was like us. And we weren't being separated by color or creed or one of 36 genders and all this nonsense we're hearing right now, right? Is it 54 now? It's 54. As if 36 wasn't enough. We need 54. And the interesting thing, I was thinking back about this. Every family on our street, Fabro Drive, Titusville, New Jersey, right across from Washington Crossing State Park in New Jersey, went to church or temple on the weekends. And other than the Cortinas, who lived next to us, who their mom, Mary, was a nurse, but they had her mom and dad living with them, everybody had stay-at-home moms, right? And it was a really interesting time. Right, it was the 60s and 70s, and we had some divide in the country because of the Vietnam War and drugs and Woodstock and all the rest, but nowhere near what it's like right now. Think about this. We have people in our communities that think it's okay that someone like me, because I'm unvaxxed, would die from COVID. They would like laugh at that. That's evil. They think it would be okay for me or someone else to be bankrupted because my health insurance that I paid thousands of dollars a year for should not cover my treatment if I get COVID because I'm not vaccinated. That's evil. And there are people in our communities who think it would be okay that we might lose our job because we're not vaccinated, which often means you lose your house, you lose your spouse, and now you could lose your kids. That's evil. I mean, that is abject evil. So I'm 63 years old. I have never experienced anything like this in my entire life. The absolute hatred that someone has for me because I don't agree with them. Now, that is actually the textbook definition of bigotry. And when someone questions me on that, I just say, go to the dictionary, and they look at it, oh, you're right, okay. Well, I'm not a bigot, but you want to think that. And here's what I do, just to like pound that final nail into the coffin. I say, and most bigots I've met are racist too. Why are you a racist? And it sends my liberal detractors absolutely over the edge, but it's true. You know it's true. We all know it's true. And this absurdity in our country absolutely needs to stop. And I've said this before, some of you probably heard this. I think I use the word absurd or absurdity maybe 10 times in my entire career as a human being, right? It's not a word you use very often. And I probably used it in classes or something like that, or in some kind of creative writing course. But it's the perfect word, I believe, and I use it multiple times a day now, so Teasel will testify to that. I use it multiple times a day because it's the only way to explain the craziness, the evil, the judgment, the condescension, the arrogance of what I experience, and probably you experience every day, from the press, from people you run into on the street, Democrats, people in our party, healthcare, academia, schools. I mean, it's nuts. It's absolutely absurd. That's the way I would explain it. It's absolute absurdity. So at the end of 2019, I get into this race because I've sold my business. I've lived the American dream. I've had a fabulous life. And you've probably heard me say this before too. If God decided to take me tonight, I would say to him, dude, that was a fabulous ride. Thank you so much for giving me my life, giving me the love I've had, the relationships I've had, the success I've had, the ability to go from like bottom 10% to top 1%. And let's, like, what's the next, like, venture we go on together? So I've got nothing that I'm angry about or whatever. I'm not blaming anybody else. I've had a fabulous life. And I looked at the end of 2019, I realized that. And I look at my 17-month-old grandson, Calvin Oliver, and I'm thinking to myself, that child won't have the same opportunity that I did if we keep going in the same direction. And he's coming from a much better launching point than me. I was down here, he's up here. He's got two college-educated parents, one of them with an advanced degree. They're doing fabulous. My son-in-law has a great business, and I'm worried about his future. Think about how serious this is. For someone like me, coming from a lower middle class family, to be worried about the future of my grandchild who's coming from that great situation, but it is that serious. And so I decided to primary Rob Portman because I thought he was doing a crappy job for Ohio. He lied to us. He told us he was a conservative. He did what I call a masterful job at what I call the one-act play, which is a campaign. He put on a costume, he put on his makeup, and he told us he was a conservative, and guess what? We bought it. I bought it, at least. I'll say that. Maybe you didn't buy it, I bought it. And I voted for him. And he got to Washington, he took off his costume, he wiped off his makeup, and I feel like he screwed me, right? That's the only term I can think of. He screwed me. And he made me look like a fool for believing him and trusting him. And you know the old expression, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm not being fooled anymore by these people. And here's the interesting thing about all these people that were so surprised about their performance. If we look at Rob Portman, for example, his prior history, we knew he wasn't a conservative. I knew he wasn't conservative. But we as conservatives have a heart and compassion. And we want to believe people when they tell us something. And we've got to be a little more discerning about, as Neil said, we've got to be more discerning about men and women who are running for office. And we've got to say, they may be telling me that, but my gut tells me they're not being straight with me. And we have a lot of people who put on that costume, put on that makeup, and then lied to us. And I don't know about you, but I'm done with it. And I'm now zero tolerance about lies in every aspect of my life. You lie to me, I'm gonna call you out, and I'm gonna call you out publicly. And I'm gonna do it every freaking time. This is a Dan Bongino, Douglas Murray, if you know Douglas Murray, the gay MP in London, who's the intellectual who wrote the book Madness of Crowds. Fabulous book, you should read it. It helps you understand intersectional politics and the way the left is dividing us better than any text I've ever seen. Michael Anton from Hillsdale. All of them say we have to have a zero tolerance policy about lying and misinformation. We need to call it out every time. And I'm not talking about like PolitiFact-less fact-checking. I'm talking about true fact-checking, objective truth, the real deal. We need to call it out, and we need to be loud and proud about doing so, or else we'll never take our culture and our country back. And it is a cultural war we're in, because as Andrew Breitbart said, politics is downstream of culture. If we don't fix our culture, we'll never fix our politics. Now, we can work on both of them at the same time. We just need to be working on both of them. We need to restore families. We need to restore a Judeo-Christian ethic in our communities. We need to get involved in community organizations. These are all the things that our founding fathers, think about this. In the 1700s, that our founding fathers believed were the foundation that was required to have the representative constitutional republic that we do. There's nothing in the Constitution that talks about morality, ethics, character, truth, right? Think about it. It's all about the God-given rights that we have. They expected that we would be a Judeo-Christian culture, and that those mores that come with that would be like the white lines on the side of the road that would keep us out of the ditch. And they talk about this in the Federalist Papers, but more importantly, they talk about us in the letters, they write to each other while they're forming this most perfect union. They talk about the fact that they thank God they have strong wives and families and a faith foundation, and that how those are absolutely important, or this perfect union would not work. And these are the kind of things that the left doesn't want us teaching our kids in school. They want to tear down every institution that the founding fathers back in the late 1700s told us were essential to have this perfect union that has done so much good around the world for so long. We have, with democracy, freed hundreds of millions of people. We have virtually cured poverty around the world. Think about this. There is nobody that should be hungry right now because we produce more food than can be consumed by humans. We have virtually cleared disease. We've cured disease, except for when it's a disease that's been bioengineered and leaks from a lab in Wuhan, China. And less than 1% of the world's population right now dies in conflict, wars, battles, sieges, things like that. There was a time when that number was between 15 to 20%. So let's say it was 20%. Sitting at a table, if you have 5 people at your table, back in the old days, medieval times or whatever, one of the 5 of you would have died in a battle. I don't know what percentage would have died from disease, but it was probably more than 1. And I'm gonna bet that there was 1 or 2 people at that table that would have died from starvation. We should be living in a virtual paradise right now. And I think it's what God wants for us. He would like us to be living in as close to a heaven on earth as possible. But it's all being stolen from us by corrupt leadership. Why are people hungry? We're sending food to these countries that have hunger, and that food is being either destroyed or sold to someone else by the corrupt leaders in that country. Nobody should be starving around the world. That's an absolute sin. And it's the most sinful part about it is we, as a human race, do nothing about those despots that are causing the death of their people that they're supposed to be leading from hunger. It's just a shame. So I got into this race because I thought Rob Portman was doing a bad job, and lo and behold, and I'm the only candidate in this race who got in before Rob Portman quit. Everybody else got in after that. And we have a Kentucky Derby field. There's 7 people that have ballot access. There were more people in the race, but 7 people that will be on the ballot that you can vote for or have already voted for. I'm the only one that got in first. And I think as a voter, which I am, and you are, I would ask you to ask yourself these 2 questions about people in this race. If you waited to get in this race until Rob Portman dropped out, did you think he was doing a good job? That's the first question. And if the answer is yes, I would submit you shouldn't vote for them, because I don't think he was doing a good job for us, kind of grassroots, normal, regular Ohioans. If you didn't think he was doing a good job, that triggers the second question. Why did you wait until, if that was the case, if you thought he was doing a bad job, why did you wait until he got out, he quit, before you got into the race? And the only answer I can think of is that they were afraid of his clout or his money or his status in the party, you know what I mean? And that is not a fighter. That's a go along to get along. That's a Rob Portman 2.0. I'm not that guy. I am not doing this to go along to get along. I'm doing this to go fix stuff in Washington and work hopefully with a governor who will cooperate so I can send stuff in Washington back to the states where it belongs constitutionally, because we've had constitutional drift for 125 years. Our federal government should be 25 to 50% smaller than it is, right? And we have Republicans, lofty Ohio Republicans. I was just in Tuscarawas County 2 nights ago, where Bill Johnson got up and said there's no way to cut the size of the federal government. We have to create jobs and revenue and taxes to fix our problems. That is absolute crap, okay? He is absolutely wrong, and I would submit to you with that attitude, he is part of the problem, not part of the solution. His wife is also on state central committee, and she's an abject liar. I watched her lie right in front of me and say she was being harassed to end a meeting and have it adjourned. She was literally looking back at me in the candidates' corral, waiting for me to say something, and I just stood there staring at her like, how you doing, Leanne? Leanne. How you doing, Leanne? Mr. Chairman, I'm being harassed back here. Look at the video. We have the video. There was no harassment going on. She's just a liar. And again, we got to call out the liars, right? So I'm calling out the liars. And people say, you're being judgmental because you're saying she's a liar. No, I'm not. I'm telling the truth. I'm not being judgmental. I'm telling the truth. She lied. So we need fighters in Washington, and I believe I'm a fighter. I don't believe I'm any more of a fighter than any of you, but God has blessed me with the financial security because I sold my business and the time to go represent you. And this is the last thing I had on my list. I've never wanted to run for office. I've never run for office. I'm not a career politician. I'm not even a lawyer. I'm just... But, yeah, eminently qualified, just like anybody else in this room. There's no special resume required. They've hoodwinked us into believing, well, you have to have some experience in legislation. No, you don't. I've signed hundreds, if not thousands, of contracts in business that I've reviewed. We've had business litigation. The dirty little secret is that virtually no legislators write any legislation. And more importantly than that, they don't read most of it. Right. Yet they vote on it. That's absurd. Yep. All right? That's absurd. So I'm the fighter. I got to do this because Satis and my team know I do this every time. I've got these 21-point policy guides.
That he never carries with him.
No, I got it. Oh. So I don't really complain. This is the solution, okay? 21 points that cover 90 to 95% of the waterfront of what you and I want done to our country to fix it. And I wrote it down because my opponents were stealing my stuff. They didn't want to talk about policy for the longest time. We would even be at events and they'd say, this was back in November. Sam, was it November? Mike Gibbons says, well, it's too early to talk about policy. I'm like, too early to talk about policy? Dude, you ran in 2018. That's all you should want to talk about is policy. You should be trying to, bury us in policy so we look like idiots. Instead, it's too early to talk about policy. I had to publish this in October of 2021 because we started having these Senate forums, and we had to talk about policy because there were policy questions asked. And since I was the only one talking about policy, and I don't think they thought about it much, they were stealing my stuff. They were plagiarizing my policy. So we wrote it down and we put out a press release, and then I sent them all a text. It was a group text. It was really funny. None of them responded. None of them responded because they don't want it. It's like, oh, I can't let so-and-so know what my strategy is. I mean, they didn't care about me. I was the nobody. But they cared about each other. And I said, you steal my policy again. It's now written down. I'm going to call you out on it every time. And if you think I'm making this up, try me. And they did, and we did, and they stopped it. But now J.D. Vance is going after my policy again because he thinks I got this President Trump, endorsement. I can do whatever I want. Gonna call J.D. out on it too. Gonna tag President Trump. Stealing someone else's stuff is plagiarism. It's dishonest and it's wrong. And again, I'm going to call them out on it. It's a lie. So I've got all kinds of policy. I'd be glad to talk to you about that forever. I do, though, want to tell you about I'm going to say 5 things that make me different than other candidates. We heard about one of them. I got in the race first, and I got in to take on Rob Portman. The second thing is the Ohio Republican Party is corrupt from top to bottom and left to right. It needs an absolute house cleaning and regime change. Yes. Now I'm going to do what I usually do at events like this, and I'm hoping the result's going to be a little different, but I don't know if it will be. Raise your hand if you're aware of a $2 to $3 million accounting inconsistency in the books of the Ohio Republican Party that Bob Paduchik and the chairman and Dave Johnson, the treasurer, are fighting tooth and nail, hammer and tong from having audited by an outside public accounting firm. Raise your hands again, please. Okay. I never get this many hands. Right. Because of Laura. Okay. Laura. And maybe Caroline had a little something to do with that too. Yeah. So, but most places, like I was in Sylvania at the Sylvania Republican Club last night, and I asked that question, and about 4 people raised their hands out of like 50, right? This is the way the Ohio Republican Party wants it. They want to keep this stuff buried. They want you to not have knowledge, to not be aware. They don't want transparency. They want to be able to tell you who to vote for, how much money to send them, and then after that, it's sit down and be quiet. That's unacceptable. That is a hierarchical, top-down organization, and that is not what our party is. Our party is a bottom-up party. Our country is a bottom-up country. Our state is a bottom-up state. But somehow we've been hypnotized into this trance to believe that that's not the case. And I'm going to do everything in my capability, with God's help, to educate people on this everywhere. So not only do we have this problem, but our bylaws in our Ohio Republican Party say that the party should be audited every year, and we have not had an audit of the books in 16 or 17 years. Laura, am I correct?
We don't even know beyond.
Yeah, we don't even know. Laura just said, so that's a new one for me. We don't even know when the last time was we had an audit of the books. I had a business I was audited like 20 years in a row because our bankers required it. If we didn't get that audit done, they would not lend us money. They wanted assurance that what we were telling them about our financial statements was accurate. This is just regular kind of American way, kind of capitalism, commerce, not-for-profit, for-profit, it doesn't matter. It's kind of the way we do things. Yet the Ohio Republican Party wants to be special. Unacceptable. They rig primary elections by giving primary endorsements.
Yep.
That's unacceptable too. I won't go into a lot of detail on that. If you want to talk to me about it, if you don't understand why that is, it has to do with slate cards and money, and it also has to do with the fact that most people are only Republicans. 80% of people are only Republicans on election day, and they have outsourced the selection of candidates to the Ohio Republican Party. They trust the party, and the party can't be trusted. The party has let us down. I've already been through this one. Rob Portman is not a statesman, he's a turncoat and a sellout to conservatives. None of the other candidates will say that, because they're afraid of him and afraid of what saying that will mean for them. Here's one I know you're not gonna like, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. Mike DeWine did not deserve the endorsement of the Ohio Republican Party. Thank you. Now you know I was joshing. He doesn't deserve to be reelected. He deserves to be investigated for House Bill 6 and First Energy. Right. Right. That might be too good for him.
It's too posh.
That Austin Powers thing with the crocodiles down in the, yeah. Did I get that right? Was that Austin Powers? Yeah. Laser. But here's something that many people missed, because it was just a blip on the radar screen in the Akron Beacon Journal and the other Gannett papers, and it was a couple paragraphs, and they didn't want to spend any time on it because they don't want to call out swamp rhinos or Democrats, right? They don't want to call out insiders. We're in a war of insiders versus outsiders. We're not in a war of Republicans versus Democrats. We're not in a war of conservatives versus liberals. We're in a war of insiders versus outsiders. 80 to 90% of the elected Republican officials in Washington, D.C. are either corrupted or are look the other way about the corruption being executed by their colleagues. And I gotta tell you, I'm not sure which is worse for us. If you know about it, don't like it and look the other way because you don't want to rock the boat, or if you're actually just doing it. I'm not sure which is worse. I think it's the second. It's like being a Christian and knowing what's right and wrong and not counseling someone else who might not know. That's probably more sinful than the person doing it unaware of their responsibility to the human race and to Jesus Christ, right? So, a few weeks ago, the judge in the First Energy settlement case, where First Energy is settling for a sweetheart deal, a couple $100 million compared to the billions of dollars that they ripped people off with, people like you and me. The judge said to First Energy that he would not approve the sweetheart deal settlement unless First Energy disclosed the names of the people at First Energy who were responsible for paying the bribes. In other words, I want to know who the people were that we would be sending to jail if we weren't settling this. And First Energy fought and fought and fought that, and the judge held firm and basically said, then we'll go to trial for criminal penalties. And they thought about disclose the names, go to jail, disclose the names, go to jail. They picked disclose the names. Now, Mike DeWine wants us to believe that he knows nothing about this, that it was Larry Householder and Larry's, 12 elves. And Mike DeWine is just plausible deniability. I had no idea. There were only two people at First Energy who paid these bribes. One of them was appointed by Mike DeWine to the Akron University Board of Trustees in 2019, right in the midst of this stuff. But he doesn't know anybody. He is in this well above his head, and he needs to be investigated. He should be stepping down, resigning, but this guy is running to be reelected. And our Republican parties endorsed him. They endorsed this guy. So please, Ohio Republican Party insiders, please don't tell me I'm being divisive when I'm calling out a freaking criminal. That is not my Ohio Republican Party. That is their Republican Party, and I'm taking, along with you, I'm taking our Republican Party back. We are all taking it back. The last thing I will say before I will get off the stage here and move on is that I am not vaxxed. You won't hear this from any other Senate candidate because they are all vaxxed. I'm not vaxxed and I'm not getting vaxxed. I am not anti-vax. My entire family other than me is vaxxed. I'm not anti-mask. You want to wear a mask? God love you. I just don't want to be forced into any of that. I am 100% against any force or mandate having anything to do with our health and our bodily sovereignty. I want to clap for you. I want to clap for you because I know you understand this. There is an absolute religious, spiritual context over this, about this, around this for me. And I have said this before and I will continue to say it. They will be peeling the guns out of my cold, dead hands before they stab me with that needle against my will. So here's the spiritual God connection. Our rights come from God. They are God-given natural rights. That's a deal he strikes with us from the minute we're born. He counts every hair on our heads, everybody's heads. He knows what's going on. His infinite intelligence and wisdom is absolutely ineffable and inconceivable by us. The Constitution doesn't grant us rights. Government doesn't grant us rights. Men and women don't grant us rights. God grants us rights. The Constitution codifies those God-given natural rights. The government protects those God-given rights. In fact, the founding fathers have said, they've been gone a while, the only reason to have government is to protect those rights. The only reason. And men and women, of course, they help enforce what's codified in the Constitution, right? Our government and the men and women that work in it, law enforcement or whatever, protect us. They're for to protect us. And we are so far away from that, and we need to get back to it. And that's what I want to go do. If you look at our God-given natural rights as a pie, we're down to a little piece right now. And they want to take the rest of those away from us. Facial recognition, ESG scores, digital currency, vax passports. It's absurd. And I'm not going to stand for it. I did a post today. I just made the decision. I'm going to fight this thing, and I don't care if I have to go down in a blaze of glory. I am not going to allow these heathen, evil, dishonest cretins to steal the future from my 2 grandsons now. I've got 2 now. I'm just not going to allow it. I'm going to do everything I can between now and the time I die to fix this problem. And I'm asking you to join me, not only to vote for me, but to join me in this, to get up, speak out, call out the dishonesty, call out the lies, and the consequences be damned. Because there are too many people that are worried about being canceled, but I get it. They're afraid of their kids being bullied in school. They're afraid of their having breaks with their family. They're afraid of being ostracized by their neighbors. They're afraid of losing their jobs. What the heck is going on that we're in a situation where we have to worry about that? This is insane, and it's absurd. So anyway, I'm Mark Pukita. I don't only want your vote, I need your vote. People like John Adams and Neil and Joe Blystone and Jonah Schultz and others of us that I believe are just doing this because we want to do the right thing are facing both evil and obstruction and impediments in our way that you just can't even imagine. My list is probably all the fingers and toes in this room. It's crazy. So again, thank you very much. God bless you, God bless our state, and God bless the most fabulous country on the face of the earth, the United States of America.